Uh-huh.
Think they're watching the same serials, following the same tossball games?
Hello, stranger. Can I interest you in a raptidon tongue? Or maybe some canid toenails? You look like a woman who's looking for some mostly fresh animal parts. I don't know. Celia usually buys whatever I have, and Mr. Pickett seemed real interested. So I thought maybe I was onto something. He came to Stellar Bay years ago, just before the board cut us off. Ended up stuck here. He was always real interested in our monsters. Mantiqueens, especially. Who wouldn't be? Now that just sounds like a fancy way to say boring people. Sure, they're real big. Hard to miss them. Well, I could send you to the same place I sent Mr. Pickett, but I haven't seen him in a few weeks. To tell true, I'm starting to get a bit worried about him. Tell you what, I'll tell you where I sent Mr. Pickett if you promise to look for him. Help him out if he's got himself in trouble. Fair deal? All right then. Leave town through the southern gate, the one right here, and head past the abandoned ruins. Last mantiqueen I saw was in the wilds out that-a-ways. Could be Mr. Pickett still out there, too. Huh. I haven't seen her in a few days, but I've been meaning to ask her how that Raptidon acid is working out. I hope it's working okay, because no one else really seems interested in this stuff. Wait, I see what's going on. She put you up to this so she could get a discount, hmm? Don't get me wrong. I'd like to give her a discount. She's a real fine lady. Always talks nice and slow, so I understand. But if I give her one, I won't hardly make a bit, on account of no one else having any use for Raptidon tongues. Nuh-uh. A lot of people think I'm not too bright, but you're not fooling me. I know she can't get these goods anywhere else. You sound pretty sure. And she is awful nice. Okay. I'll do it. Once her shift ends, we'll go someplace nice. Maybe the
Allez,
Chef Raymond's.
encore une petite commission tant qu'elle est dans le coin, avant de passer aux choses sérieuses. Et puis cette personne semble être la personne idéale pour revendre les morceaux de raptidon qui encombrent les poches d'Ophélia.
Have you talked to Sebastian yet? What did he say? Okay, but how did he say it? Did he sound excited? Or like he was just agreeing to it? Was he like, yay, a date with Celia. I've secretly been waiting for this. Or was it more, sure, I don't have anything else going on. Not to worry. If I never buy another Raptidon tongue, it'll be too soon. Ah, look at me going on. I'm sure you've got other things to do, and Mr. Nandi's giving me that back-to-work look. Anyhow.
C'en est presque rajeunissant, cette impression de retour au collège.
Aha, the helpful stranger I've heard so much about. Here to do business, hmm? Clear my schedule. This newcomer has a meeting with me. Celia, will you make a note of that for my self-review? Very generous.
Noted.
But not so generous I can't drive a good bargain. Now, who sent you? Rizzo's, perhaps? Or Auntie Cleo herself? What a charming notion. One doesn't meet many free spirits in Alcyon. Not outside Tartarus prison, anyway. Forgive me, I'd be positively enraptured. Only, I take it this means you aren't here for Saltuna. Now, there's no need to humor me. I'm used to this particular letdown. I had hoped that livening up our advertisements with enticing figures would draw the other corporations back to our bosom, but it seems we're back to the drawing board. Thanks to the so-called hazard clause, Monarch has been cut off from the board's resources and protection for 10 years now. Now, we've kept ourselves in business by trading with individual corporations, but given the off-the-books nature of those transactions, such arrangements are precarious. Yes, freedom is a tempting ideal, but a rather costly paramour.
Can't imagine why you'd sneer at the notion of a free colony. Could it be because you're an agent of the establishment?
I used to be young and idealistic too, but you can't run a city on high-minded ideals.
Exactly. Intellectualism fuels the train to mankind's future, but the tracks the train runs on are forged from practicality.
Sounds like something out of the chairman's own notes, Vic.
Yes, it's as though the good vicar has plucked the very words from my brain.
Indeed. Mr. Nandi here has a rather ingenious plan to get MSI restored to the board.
On our terms, mind you.
Returning to the board is your only chance if you hope to survive here on Monarch. That doesn't mean it'll be easily achievable.
Indeed not. No worthwhile plan was ever simple. That's what I always say.
And if our advertising scheme hasn't borne fruit, then perhaps it's time we took matters into our own hands.
It's true, our Celia is an alarmingly competent middle manager. At any other company, she'd be wasted in data entry. The plan she refers to is a two-pronged approach, and the first part involves seeing Stellar Bay properly defended. Not long, but the devil is always in the details. And the salient detail here is a Bolt 52 cartridge. If you can get us what we need to rejoin the board, starting the Bolt 52, we'll be able to become one of the most productive and secure cities in Halcyon.
And you'll have a powerful ally on the board.
Why, one of the strongest defenses in Halcyon. An extremely powerful ordnance.
I was starting to get bored listening to you, until you said the phrase, extremely powerful ordnance.
It is quite the rush. I'll need to gather some supplemental materials, but I mustn't get ahead of myself.
You do tend to do that.
The Bolt 52 will be in the old arms building southwest of town, which used to be part of Stellar Bay before we had to move our walls in. And these days, it's overrun with marauders and raptidons. Do be careful. I've lost more than a few people to marauders and raptidons out there. Oh, and while you're at it, there should be a terminal in the arms building with some dangerous information. Perhaps you could delete it so it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. What can I do for you? Hiram? Why, he's probably still out at Devil's Peak. Not that he's had the courtesy to notify me, at any rate. You'd head south along the road and look for a mountain to the west. Not that I'd advise it. It's a terribly dangerous trek. But if you insist on going, I'd recommend taking a local guide. Nyoka would be a prime candidate.
If you can keep her sober.
Then it's good that I keep such meticulous notes. I've asked myself the same thing many times, especially seeing as the legal mechanisms we employed were part of the board's own bylaws. Not intentionally, though that's technically true. For many years, this planet was home to as many corporations as Terra 2, but back then it was known as Terra 1. Really? I always thought they were refreshingly straightforward names. After all, the whole point of terraforming was to make them Earth-like.
Here, though, the results were mixed.
And as the other corporations began to tally their losses, they decided to pull out. Our leadership at the time certainly wanted to.
And how did that work out?
Most regard Monarch as a lost cause. But there were others of us who saw an opportunity. The chance to improve working hours and conditions, to reform MSI from the ground up. It's humane. But it's also good business sense. Exhausted, sick, and malnourished workers are not productive workers. Even a cursory review of the data bears that out. Anyway, we learned of a loophole in the corporate bylaws that would allow MSI to claim ownership of the entire planet once the other corporations pulled out, creating the perfect environment for us to enact these new reforms. That's what I thought. But the senior executives laughed in our faces and insisted we'd be relocating to Terra 2 along with everyone else. Yes, some of us stayed behind, and as the most senior executive remaining, I ended up in charge of what was left of MSI. I moved forward with our planned reforms, as well as our strategy to assume ownership of the planet. Yet not long after I renamed it Monarch, the other corporations dislodged us from the board and began an official campaign to paint us as lawless savages. I don't know. Everything we did was legal and above board. We followed their rules, and yet they still found reasons to declare us outlaws.
Your first mistake was expecting the board to cut you a fair deal.
I understand the sentiment, but if we can't rely on some sort of framework, then what do we have? I do think there's something useful in a governing body like the board. Something that keeps us from anarchy, but I dearly wish it functioned differently. It's a legal provision that gives the board the authority to cordon off any planet or location that it deems dangerous.
A necessary evil for the greater good of society.
That's exactly how the board describes it. Yes, making all of MSI criminals in the board's eyes. Rather hard to run a business that way. Why wouldn't anyone? They own nearly all the resources and infrastructure in Halcyon.
Yeah, and once you go back to him, they'll own your dignity too.
Without the board, chaos would overtake the system. Working within the established order isn't a principle to snub one's nose at, Captain.
To be on the board is to be part of the colonial community, and being cut off means slow strangulation. Indeed, we've got to consider realities, not ideals. If membership on the board can ease our hardships and provide us with opportunities, then that's the path I mean to pursue. Besides, I'm hopeful that additional leverage on our part will allow us a more equitable relationship.
Don't get ahead of yourself, sir.
Yes, it'll be easier to explain once we have the Bolt 52. My hope is to maintain the reforms we've managed here, and who knows? Perhaps once we're restored, we could spread them to other corporations. What can I do for you? I see. And was his delivery of the MSI authorized greeting up to snuff? Well, that's excellent. I'll see that your feedback makes it into his review. What else can I do for you?
Leur erreur, c'est d'estimer que le Conseil accepterait leur dissidence. S'ils s'arment, ils vont juste avoir l'air plus dangereux, se faire envahir, briser et rentrer dans le rang. Ce n'est pas parce qu'ils disent détester la violence qu'ils n'hésiteront pas à l'utiliser, tant que le Conseil aura les moyens de ses prétentions. Ah, mais non, monsieur Nandi. Ces publicités sont clairement trop honnêtes pour fonctionner dans le néolibéralisme. Le marketing du 21e siècle faisait déjà bien mieux. Enfin, pire. Enfin, du moins plus efficace en tout cas. Cet appel à l'aide n'ayant été suivi d'aucune promesse de récompense, Ophélia décide de l'ignorer. Il ne faudrait pas que son équipage prenne de mauvaises habitudes, comme sauver des gens et ne pas être payé.
Whoa, by the stars, my poor heart. I just about pissed my jumpsuit. Most people don't.
We're used to folks swooning at our feet. You don't gotta be embarrassed.
A healthy survival reflex is nothing to be embarrassed about. Besides, this place is enough to try anyone's nerves. Only every day. But in case you haven't noticed, we don't exactly get ships on a regular basis, yours notwithstanding. And even if I did scrape together enough to buy passage out with sublight, which would mean reaching Fallbrook without getting eaten, shot, or dissolved into green goop, what then? Well, thank you for reminding me. As if I weren't already destined for an early grave. Where should I begin? With the oversized mantisaurs? Or perhaps the rats spewing acid at our walls? The board was right. This place isn't fit for human habitation, and I was a fool for staying. Sanjar, of course. He had all these glorious ideas about how he'd run Monarch. Rest periods between every work shift. No shift more than 10 hours long. It all sounds wonderful, until you realize there's only a few centimeters of repurposed steel between you and the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. I'm not even finished. Add that to the supply shortages, thanks to being cut off by the board, and I dare say we're no better off than the lowliest Spacer's Choice enclave.
Look, you might not be better off, but I can tell you, it can always be worse. Try celebrating what you've got.
I see you've stuck around.
Eh bien, pas de travail jusqu'à 10 heures d'affilée.
Lucky you.
Ça, c'est une révolution qui a valu la colère du conseil. Ophélia n'est plus que décidée de ne plus jamais travailler pour des grandes compagnies. Être capitaine est un métier risqué, mais se dévouer corps et âme à un système qui va vous broyer jusqu'à la pulpe, plus jamais.
How does it feel?
How does what feel?
Serving an instrument of corporate supremacy?
Leur discussion politique pourrait durer des jours sans être résolue.
We all in one piece?
Right, so as I was saying before, let me hazard a guess. You're talking about the church.
Isn't it true the OSI is just a cog in the machine of oppression?
I'm glad you're asking questions, Felix. Curiosity is the foundation of the scientician faith.
Don't try and convert me, preacher.
Watch out, Captain!
Au final, c'est une hiérarchie personnelle. Vaut-il mieux les risques de la liberté ou la sécurité des chaînes? Ophélia a choisi pour elle-même. Mais elle préférerait ne pas se mêler du choix des autres. Si les ouvriers de MSI préfèrent avoir le conseil pour leur assurer un approvisionnement sûr, elle ne le reprocherait pas. Si les dissidents s'enfuient de l'usine pour créer leur propre utopie, elle ne le reprochera pas non plus. Mais le scénario va veiller à ce qu'elle s'en mêle, comme toujours. C'est malheureusement difficile de rester neutre lorsqu'on est une opératrice de scénario.
That's the last of them. Incoming!
Here they come!
Mieux vaut être prudent par ici, si on veut pouvoir appliquer la bonne vieille règle numéro 1 en paix. Mais non, rien à signaler pour l'instant. Ophélia peut être en train de devenir parano. Il est de notoriété publique que les directeurs dirigent et que les autres travaillent. Mais ça fait toujours un peu bizarre de le voir écrit noir sur blanc dans un rapport. Comme si c'était un but officiel, en soi, d'être payé plus que les autres pour brasser de l'air. C'est donc ça. Nanny veut que les fichiers soient détruits, pour qu'on ne sache pas que MSI voulait promouvoir cette Dora Erickson plutôt que lui. Enfin, on s'en moque un peu et c'est lui qui paye.